Yondamina, welcome back to my Japan travel series. Today is about the landing day, or the very first time I landed on Japanese soil. I remember I got off the airplane and there was a bunch of new zigzag lines that I didn't really recognize for most airports. It seems Japan was really over preparing for its first tourists to come ever since COVID. And while I was walking through the midst of all these lines, there was a lot of people that were probably not as prepared as I was, because I think there was about, I want to say, 5 different blockades that wanted to make sure that you had all your paperwork done or whatever, or any electronic way you filled out your approval for being a tourist during COVID times. Something quite charming about the Narita airport in particular is that they do have a bunch of, I want to say it was Nintendo, but it could have just been Mario, decals all over the walls of the airport. I normally have very bad experiences with picking up luggages, but I don't know if it was Japan or the nature of it being just barely after the COVID restriction was let off, but looking for luggage was surprisingly easy because no one was around. So that was pretty convenient. Now, it was also pretty clear that my Japanese language level was not as proficient enough as I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to be able to get around at least decently well with the amount I knew. That did not prove to be true. With that being said, though, the airport was very accommodating to my low-level Japanese speaking ability, so I didn't have much issues on that end. So before moving into the next part of my story, I want to reestablish something. I mentioned a friend in the last video that wanted to help me get myself comfortable and acquainted with Japan. And I just want to call her by something different. Let's call her Suki Hirune. So upon getting my luggage, I head into one of the exits to find Hirune's mother, who I'll just call Suki-san. It was a bit awkward at first because there was a very visible language barrier. She knew very little English, and even though I've studied Japanese, it wasn't proficient enough to really keep a conversation with her. I could only just tell her the basics. After Suki-san called Hirune, she guided me to where her car is. And I should mention at this point, I am just exhausted. I could barely keep my eyes open. But at the same time, I had enough excitement in me where it all kind of balanced it out. So I was in a weird middle area on being awake and falling asleep. So once again, we got to the parking lot and she guided me to where her car is. And upon her reversing it, she didn't see there was a car behind her, and that made the other car slammed on the brakes. And this is what really shocked me. Suki-san then pulled back into the parking space, got out of her car, and started bowing as the other car drove by. I've studied Japanese mannerisms before, but that moment really stuck with me as far as how ingrained that truly is. So moving on, while driving to the freeway and looking at the pretty buildings, I couldn't really be amazed due to me being awake for around 20 hours at this point. Though I can't say, upon this somewhat dazed state, I kind of just felt that Tokyo looked like Los Angeles at first. So I think this is where it really all began, my real impression of Japan. Upon getting off the freeway, I saw the Shibuya streets for the first time. There was a very odd feeling where I knew this memory would be special, but it didn't feel special at the moment, and chances are it was probably the exhaustion. So me and Suki-san go to the garage parking lot and tried to find Hirune. So when I saw her, oh yeah, also, while we were speaking in the middle of the Shibuya streets, some non-Japanese woman approached us and asked where the Pokemon Center location is. She definitely saw her opportunity and took it. Little did she know that we were standing right in front of that building, but at the time we didn't know exactly where it was. So I hope that woman ended up finding it without too much trouble. Hirune knew of a really good izakaya, so we ended up following her lead. Now this location was kind of cool because it felt tucked away. It was inside a building. We'd had to go upstairs to some hallways, and in the very end of one hallway is where this izakaya was. It was noisy. I mean, I don't know what you would expect of an izakaya, but that's what it was. So when we sat down, we just chatted, ordered our food, pretty basic stuff. Although, when I started eating, I realized I was in a weird mood where I was too sleepy to be hungry. Yet I didn't I didn't eat that much on the flight, but the hunger, for some reason, my hunger did not come through. I was just that sleepy, I suppose. I want to assume that maybe my body didn't want to use the last remaining energy to process the food or something. So all I ended up getting was just one yakisoba. And then after dinner, we drove off to the Shinjuku hotel that Hirune was kind enough to provide me with. So Hirune helped me check into the hotel, and I realized that she knew the person that worked there. I did a little research later, but apparently this hotel can't actually be found in Western sites. I guess that's the benefit of having connections. So we got into the hotel, and Hirune made sure that I was all settled in and everything. No big impression I really had on the hotel room. I knew it was going to be small, but I didn't mind it. I lived in small rooms before, so. Then Hirune and I had the final chat where we discussed a few tips and what I should expect for Japan. This chat lasted for about 5 minutes, and she got her stuff together and got ready to close out her night. So before leaving my hotel room, she left me with her final words. Welcome to Japan. So in the next video, I'm going to be talking about my first real day in Japan and what that was like. So the lesson for this video is, if you can sleep on the flight, try to do it. Alright everyone, thanks for stopping by. Don't get lost out there. Matane.